sure.
Okay, it's live.
It's live.
Mm.
Okay, we are live.
I got to do it, Barbara.
Okay,
I got to do it.
go
This
ahead.
is, I know we're talking about, but I got to do it. Welcome to another episode of the Love Lab. It's just, I mean, thanks so much for reaching out and coming, because we talked about it during the show and it was a great show. But we had so many comments and people asking questions, and you were asking a lot of questions. So we just decided to just kind of bring our conversation live and let you guys have an understanding of what the Love Lab is going to be about. As you see, it's going to be starting on Clubhouse. The name of the Clubhouse is the Gem Hunter. And then the room is going to be called the Love Lab. All right. So it starts literally next Friday. So Barbara,
This Friday.
This Friday. So Barbara, you had all kinds of questions. Go ahead and put me on the spot and let's get this started.
Okay, we were just jamming to the new grooves of the Love Lab with Mr. Very B. Mixon in the house. Yes. So I'm just excited. Before we get into some questions about this, Barry, I just want to thank you again for rising that awareness for us, especially as women, for us as me as a woman, and other women out there to really understand who we really are, especially when it comes to the gyms. Because it makes more and more sense to every Wednesday when I hear you. And just a special plug out every Wednesday at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, you can come on the Gem Hunter Show with Barry B. Mixon. I'm sounding like you, Barry. I'm getting to this groove.
That's what happens when you're on the show called the Love Lab. Everybody's Barry White. When you say that, the Love Lab, it's just like, yeah, okay, because that's what I want. I want people, and it's not. And this was one of the questions that it's not about relationships per se. We're going to have a whole nother room for that. But it's really about the relationships that you have with yourself. Yes. Working that out, literally figuring that out, because using gemstones as a template. I believe that women especially, because of the relationships that women have with gemstones, I believe that maybe a way to get women to to empower who they are is using the thing that they love, because women can see it. They can understand the value of it. And if I can show you how so many of those same concepts and traits that exist in gemstones exist in you as a woman, then your value is going to increase. At least your self-worth and empower, I believe, will increase.
Yes, definitely. And before we start, because I want to talk more about, the whole beginning, you said a little bit of it about how it started with the love, doing the Love Lab. And it's really important. I mean, I love how you always mention about value. And a lot of times, especially us as some women, I don't want to put all women in a whole, little box here. But let's just say for me, I'll use me because I can't get in trouble.
There you go.
Can't get in trouble. Just use me for a minute. With my value, I wasn't always feeling the way I feel about myself now that I was 10 years ago, but even 3 or 4 years ago, because I know things change in your life. But then it started with when I was younger, and I brought all that craziness, stories in my life into my adulthood, where I felt like I was never really of value because people, places, and things was telling me you don't have value. You're not going to be anything. Why are you even thinking going to be something? Even with my Sergeant Beckley, which I always say my mother, I love her dearly. Hey, bless her soul. But she was in there within the mix with everybody, because she always wanted me, no matter what I did, Barry, no matter what. We had these conversations about our mothers, like it was sister from another mother, that I never was enough. It was like, you did this, well, you need to do this, and I would do something. You did that, you still didn't do it right. It was just on and on. So that was just in my head all the time. And then when you come and say, well, you got value, you in the gym, and I'm sitting there like, do you know where I just came from? It's going to take some time for me to think like that. So that's, I think this is, I mean, just you could put someone else to it, but I think that's what makes your mission, I have to say mission in life, what you do, is so good of awareness, and it brings us as women to kind of rethink, what value we have.
Yeah, I mean, it's value, and you said it right. It is my mission, and because of our similar background, and I will say, I've heard you say, call your mother Sergeant Beckley. If since your mother and I basically came from the same training school, your mother is at least a gunnery sergeant, at least a gunnery sergeant. I mean, senior. Don't put her now. The things that your mom did to you from your stories. Oh, look, come on. Yeah, she wasn't new at that. My mother was a gunnery sergeant. She trained other people, okay? And your mom and my mom probably went to the same school. But out of that, and as you can see, we can both laugh about it now because we understand our value, because of when you begin to understand your own value. That is one of the greatest things, one of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself. Because you know what you're bringing, you know your uniqueness, you know the things that make you special, and once you understand that, you're not worried about the other 7.6 billion people on the planet. There's only one Barbara Beckley. There's only one Barry Mixon, Barry B. Mixon, Barbara J. Beckley. Okay. And once you understand that, it's powerful. And I don't want to put it in terms of, you've heard that before, kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just feel. They have commercials on TV for some psychiatric app because people just tell you, just smile. And, that just doesn't hit it. I mean, it may work for some people, but when you've gone through some of the things that many of us gone through, telling somebody just to smile, I remember the scene from Color Purple.
Oh, I love that.
There was a woman sitting behind me, and this is when what was Whoopi's character's name? What was
I know that movie. I know you're talking about.
Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg's character, who was being abused all the time. And I remember there was a woman sitting behind me. She said, "Well, why don't she just leave?" I'm like, I just look back at her like, "What are you talking about? Go where? Go where?" I mean, and so I don't want our conversations or the love lab to just be come on, girl, just smile. You're all right. Because that didn't speak for me. That wasn't what I felt about myself. And I'm sure you didn't feel that way about yourself. But once you became aware of who you are. And that's where the gemstones come in, because here's a sapphire right here. There's a sapphire right here. And that sapphire and that ruby are actually the two of the same stones. But they're both called corundum. And one is red and one is blue. And the thing is, when you understand this, both of them have value. There are some people who love rubies. The color red, it makes them feel sexy. It makes them feel powerful. It makes them feel all types of things. And yet there are so many people that love sapphires. For them, sapphires, that color blue, it's calming. It's a powerful color. It's a color of royalty. It's blue is a unique color in nature. But they're both sapphires. They're both corundum. And sapphire feels like, if they had human emotions, sapphire would be like, well, yeah, I know, Ruby, you red, and that's all cool, but we come in a whole bunch of other colors. So, there's that. So my point is, once you understand what you are,
it's a whole nother world.
Yeah,
it really is.
World.
It's a whole nother world.
And I use gemstones because gemstones is the one thing that we really don't argue about. You ever notice that? We might argue about paintings, we might argue about buildings, we may argue about dresses or hairstyles, but rubies are rubies, sapphires are sapphire, gold is gold. Diamonds, you love diamonds. Diamonds is big diamonds, small diamonds. You're not particular. You like diamonds, just diamonds. I like diamonds. And if you have different colors, bonus.
So now, Barry, question. We got questions, and we're coming today because another thing we want to make sure that you kind of understand, how it's going to go in the room, how it's going to go in the love lab. So we want to make sure that you understand, because we want you to be there on Friday night. We want you to come as you are, say what you have to say. Now, this is not a room. We're just going to put a disclaimer here to be like, man of this, women this. This is not that type of thing. This is, and there's a lot of Clubhouse rooms that have that, but we're basically talking about understand your value, how to get to your value, talk about what you feel. And I know there's gonna be some questions. This is one question I want to ask Barry, is that for women, now you just said once you know your value, it's like what we both said, it's like a whole nother world. It's like, wow. But you have to get there. And I know sometimes most of the time it takes a process. So Barry, how would you explain that to us as women, since we're talking about women now in our own relationship, to really start off, okay, I feel like this. Sergeant Beckley, gunnery, what you said.
Gunnery sergeant.
Basically told me I wasn't nothing, won't be nothing, won't look like nothing, and never will. So how do you come from that to now the diamond factor, as I always talk about?
and that's the exciting thing. That's the thing that I have discovered. This is the reason why the Gem Hunter stories exist, or now the Love Lab, is because it's about stories. The reason why you feel the way you feel about yourself is because someone told you a story, right? If you understand the power of stories, if you understand that nothing has value without a story, right? And I've said this before, but for somebody who hasn't, let's say this pen, right? This is just a regular Sharpie black pen. This is the retractable kind, right? So there you go. You can write on it. Now, they made millions, billions of these, I'm sure. But if I told you that this pen was the last pen that, I don't know, the Dalai Lama used when I was leaving, when last time I was in Asia and I met the Dalai Lama and I didn't have anything else to write. No, let's back up. Let's use a real example. The first time I used this pen was when I met Bob Beamon. Bob Beamon was the greatest Olympian of all time. He went to my high school. I had no idea who he was when I saw him because he didn't look like the way I imagined Bob Beamon looking. He had a Hawaiian shirt on. He had one of those kind of stove pie hats, the kind of webbing hats and stuff on. I remember when he sat next to me, I'm thinking, who is this? Who is this guy? I don't want to sit next to him. And that's when they said, oh, now introducing Bob Beamon. I'm like, oh my God. So now his value, he's no longer just some crazy guy with a Hawaiian shirt on. This is Bob Beamon. And this is the pen. Actually, this wasn't the original pen. We had a pen like this that he signed the tape measure. Those of you don't know, Bob Beamon was the guy who jumped 29 feet and 2.5 inches at the 1968 Olympics. One of the greatest athletic achievements of all time. Look it up. And he signed my tape measure with something like this. So let's make believe this is the actual pen. 2 minutes ago, when I told you about this pen, you would have thought nothing of it. It's just another pen. But now, if I told you that this was the pen that Bob Beamon, one of the greatest Olympians of all time, used this pen to sign something this pen automatically has value. Why? Because I told you a story. So imagine, there's no difference. My whole concept is that the only difference between you and a gemstone is that you were told a story about a ruby, a sapphire, a pearl, a tourmaline, a topaz, sunstone. Whatever stone is your stone, someone told you a story and you believed it.
So
and you embodied it.
So with the story that I heard from my mother at the time, because as me growing up, younger now to old, the stories in my life were not the right stories.
Let's not say the right stories, because that's where people get all upset. Those were the stories that you were told for whatever reason, because your mother, my mother, whoever, they were told stories too. So they reflected what they were told, what they believed. some guys will say to some men want to keep women kind of like little girls all their life. Okay, I heard they have this series on not Netflix, AMC, where they have this. They're talking about Hugh Hefner and Playboy.
Mm-hmm.
And Hugh Hefner, they showed the old video when he was on the Dick Cavett show, and he said, "My girls." And the way he said "girls," and the woman who was quote unquote a feminist was like, "Well, see, that's the problem. They're not girls, they're women." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. When I say girls, I mean girls for everybody." He said, "Well, she said, that's your problem. You are minimizing who they are." And he seemed like really honestly, like, really? He literally said, "When I say girls, I mean it as a term of endearment." Why? Because someone told him that.
Yeah.
Someone told him that it was okay to say girls. I remember when I went to I'm a clinical massage therapist, and I remember when I was going through massage therapy school, and I got to the part where you're supposed to the person is draped, you're supposed to remove their undergarments, or you're saying that you're going to drape it. And I said panty, and there was 4 other women in my group, and they were like, and I was like, what I say? And then she said, "You don't say panty, you say underwear or undergarment." And for a minute I was like, what? Like, what difference is it? So there's 2 directions I can take. Either I can take the news story and say, okay, now how I see how that, I understand why I'm using it, but I have to understand the audience that I'm talking to. Or I can sit there and go, well, I'm going to call it what I'm going to call it, and then have no more friends. Have no clients.
That's what. And you know what? I just want to back up just a little bit what you said, because you were right. What I was saying about, the wrong stories. So now I can say that. What I mean by the wrong stories, because now I know they were the wrong stories. Back then, they were the stories that were being told to me. Like my mother was saying, you got to do better, you not do this. I didn't know if that story was right or wrong. I just knew that I was listening to the story and I was part of it because it was about me. So that I knew that. But then I got older and I started looking back saying, okay, she telling me that, being fat, I will never be about nothing, not having my right, not doing this and that. I'll never be educated. I'll never be smart. You got to keep doing that. Now I can say, no, that wasn't right. that wasn't right. But back then I couldn't say that because I couldn't comprehend at that point. All I can say is that's the story I'm being told.
And this is where storytelling really comes in. Instead of even saying that that's not right, you say to yourself, okay, it has whatever, because you're not going to get rid of that. That's not, my mother calling me the names my mother got. That's not, I'm 61. I still hear the stuff that my mother called me when I was 5. Okay. So that's not going to go. Okay. This and so it's not about, well, just make believe it doesn't hear. No, that's not it. If you've been mistreated by your mother, your father, a husband, whoever that's mistreated, yourself, that's not going to go away. Let's just do this. Let's say, once you understand that it's a story, let's put a different character in there. Let's add a different character in there that their powers, their story supersedes the stories that you've been told. If someone tells you that, okay, all your life you've been told that you were fat and everything, and yet you have people that love you, you have people that respect you, you have people that think you're beautiful. Well, then, okay. It's kind of like, well, one person said I was fat, but there's 500 people that tell me I love you. They love me. I'll go with them. I'm going on that team. Let's just make it easy. When people tell me, Barry, I don't like you, I go, oh, okay, what's your name? And they'll tell me your name. I'm like, good. They said, why you ask me your name? Because the line forms to the left. And I always kind of like to keep track of those people. So, because once you tell me that you don't like me, that I'm funny looking and whatever, I go, okay, that's your opinion. And let's put it in terms of gemstones. Does everybody like rubies? Nope. Does everybody like tourmaline? No. Does everybody like jade? No. But yet, do you ever see Jade saying, I want to be Jade. I'm tired of being Jade. No, because it has its value.
So now, Barry, going back now, we talked about our stories. You said about our stories, and the question about is a woman dealing with those stories that they know in their life, like you'll never be whatever, what we just said. So how do they get to the true value of who they are, being told all this time that they're something, that they are something else?
You got to look back. You got to step back. You got to, just like I do when I appraise the gemstone, you got to step back and just look at it for real. What is it? What is it? They said that you're this. Well, is that a positive or is that a negative? And if it's a negative, okay, that's not working for you. And little by little, start telling yourself a separate story. I speak today because my ex-wife said the most wonderful thing in the world to me. I didn't feel wonderful when she said it. She said, "Oh my God, I'm so sick of you talking. You talk all the time. You are a fountain of useless information." Now, I could have been hurt by that and been like, dang, well, okay. Or I could say, well, yeah, I do talk a lot. Then what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do? What are you going to do with it? Okay, well, let's try to find something that I can actually use. Let's find some information that maybe people do care about. She's right. Okay, if I'm just talking about socks, Einstein didn't wear socks. I mean, he just wasn't, socks were just not important to him. Whereas Napoleon wore red socks all the time. And if you're not into socks, well, then you're thinking it's useless. But if you're into socks, you're like, oh my God.
He really wore red?
He really wear red ones? Like a bright red, or what kind of red? Like a Perry? I mean,
yeah, did it have stripes on it? What's going on? What red was it?
And think about the power of that. Think about the power, the self-empowerment that you can get by telling your own stories. Because go ahead.
So now did you say, take a step back, like you said, and look at it and kind of analyze and say, okay, is somebody, this was said in your life, is this negative or positive? Is negative, then the line forms to the left, like you said, about people not liking you. And then what's positive, you keep that and let that be your new story, or just adding to your value?
Well, once you have the story, your value is going to increase. That's the power of stories. Once you understand what it is, once you understand what you can do that's better than anybody, not so much anybody else, it's just something that you can do. It's the music that's inside of you. It's like I told that story once before. I don't particularly, Beyonce doesn't do anything for me per se. Okay. I mean, she's okay, but I don't think, if I had a list of the 10 greatest female singers, Beyonce wouldn't be on that list. I can tell you that right from now. Now, I guarantee you, I said it. I put it out there. This show is advertised. We broadcast in 5 different continents. I guarantee you that Beyonce is not sitting in her room, wherever she is in her multi-million-dollar mansion, crying, and JC says, "Baby, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Barry Mixon doesn't like me. She's not saying that. She's not saying that. She never went to the bank and said, or did an interview and say, yes, I've reached all kinds of levels, but I still don't really feel good about myself until Barry Mixon likes me. No. So tell yourself a different story, because let's put it back in gemstones. Rubies, diamonds, sapphires, they come from really jacked up places all over the earth. You would not want to go, hey, honey, we're going to get some emeralds today. Isn't that where you got to dig down that hole that's about 100 feet deep and hot and cold, and you might die, and there's mud and snakes and bugs and everything else? Yep, that's where we're going to go. Okay, let's go. Nobody does that. If Zales or Jarrett's was in a jungle, nobody's going to Zales. Okay. If Zales was in if K Jewelers was in the jungle, their commercial would be every kiss leads to malaria. I mean, that's what it would be about. If you had to go get a gemstone, but because you understand the value of it, you don't care where it came from.
You don't.
So those are the kind of things that we're going to talk about on the Love Lab. Let's just see. It's a laboratory. Let's just see if the story that you're telling yourself matches up with the story of where you want to go.
Okay, and I just want to add to that. We're talking about your stories. Another thing that I found out, like I said, I'm putting it on myself because I don't get in trouble with any other woman, other women out there, is that gotta deal with this. Is that just because the stories that are in my life with I talked about the bullying, there's a whole bunch of other ones that some people heard that I said about my dad and everything. But I used to be like, ooh, I don't want to tell those. I don't know about. They're going to look at me in a different light, or I got sexually abused. They're going to look at me in a different way. Now, to me, those are like a badge of honor, and I know people are like, "How are those stories a badge of honor?" Because of where I am now, and the strength what I got from each and every one of them. So you can turn it around because you don't want to take those stories just like you said, Barry, and just say, because they're never going to go away. What our mothers told us, it's not going to go away. It's up to us to make sure that we don't get into that trap of thinking that what they were saying to us, but it's not going to go away because that's something, again, that kind of helped us to get into where we are now. I mean, I have to say, when my mother pushing me the way I do, now what I do in my business and I do in my job and everything that I do push myself because I want to get better. I want to get to the next level. Maybe if I didn't have that, you never know. I might be sitting there saying, oh, well, whatever, and sitting around looking for whatever, but I have to give it where it's, where it's helped me. So,
and that's called the antagonist.
Yeah.
That's the antagonist. That's the most powerful part of the story, the thing that you got to get over. And we see it all the time. We see it, those of you who watch superhero movies or sci-fi movies, there's never been a Batman, Superman, Iron Man, Wonder Woman where the hero, Batman, Superman, Iron Man, Wonder Woman, does not have to go against a force that's stronger than them. And to the point where you're sitting there like, I don't think Wonder Woman's gonna make it. Remember the first one?
Please mention that. The first one. The first one. Yes,
the first one. I mean, that I don't even know what he was. I think he was in her family or something like that. He was whooping her ass. I mean, it was like, I started as a man. As a Marine. I'm like, yo, y'all are getting a little bit rude here. I mean, he was hitting her with like tractor trailer trucks and freight cars and stuff. And Wonder Woman, she's sitting there, with her little outfit on and looking all, sweet, and she got her thing, and he was like, wham, wham. And you're like, dang.
Kicking her butt. He was just, whoo.
She overcame that. And you're sitting there, the beauty of it as the audience, you're sitting there thinking, how's she gonna get through that? And when she got over that, that's when she became Wonder Woman.
Let's add to it, Barry. Not just she overcame it through the movie. If people seen the first Wonder Woman, when he was whooping her butt, because he was whooping her butt. I mean, he was whooping that. And I was like, dang, is this the right movie? I was like, is this Wonder Woman or what?
Should we call the police or something? This is domestic violence going on right here. What's up?
I said, this is her movie. How's she gonna get all beat up? But what happened? The thoughts, remember, Barry, when she was younger and she was practicing, they said, you got to do it over again. I forgot her name when she was on her island. And she said, you got to do it. And they were showing her how she was practicing and she was working at it. And she was a warrior. They kept telling you, a warrior, you're different. You're going to be different. I mean, all that was running through her head when he
And what do you call that? What do you call that? Let me stop you for a second. When you're saying what's running through her head, what's the one word that you can call all that stuff was running through her head?
Her value, right?
Her begins with an S.
Her
stories.
Stories. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Her stories. Yeah.
All she heard was she replayed the stories. And now she understands that everything that she had done in the past had prepared her for the butt whooping that she was going to get over. And because she remembered that her mother said, you know, once upon one day, you're going to face against something that is like all this and all this stuff that you're doing now is going to make sense later on. And once she remembered that, she was like, oh, well, wait a minute.
Yeah. It's like all of a sudden.
Now I know who, playtime is over, boys and girls. And that's when she became Wonder Woman. We're like, dang. Now she's Wonder Woman. So and that's the important part of the story. You have got to remind yourself of who you are. You got to remind yourself of what you're about and why you got here and what makes you different. And you gotta hear your own music in your head of what your sound, who are you? Barbara, Diane, Becky, Sally Sue, Raquanda, whatever your name is. You know, I understand that you're going through what you're going through, whether you have gone through it or currently going through it right now. Look at it as a story. Where does that person, even if that person is the person you're looking in the mirror, and ask yourself, okay, how is this working for me? You know, like I'm pissed all the time. I'm mad. I'm not doing what I want to do and all this other stuff like this. What are you going to do? If this was a movie, and you saw your character up there can't pay the bills, can't do this, your kids driving you crazy, this and this and all this other stuff, you want to lose weight, what would the hero of your movie do? See, because that's the beauty of stories. You don't have to pay admission. You don't have to get a new director. You the director. You don't have to get a new casting manager. You the casting manager. If there's a character in your story, i.e. your job, your man, your kids, whatever else and stuff like this, listen, give them a different role. I'm sorry. We see it all the time. Actors come on, they don't do well. What happens? They get cut. The show keeps on going.
Or sometimes the whole loses people. Away.
You know, The Walking Dead loses people all the time. You don't like, okay, the show's over. No, it keeps going. It keeps going. Game of Thrones. How many people Game of Thrones? That guy, you know, when that woman was messing with the woman the blonde hair, and she had those dragons, and he was hurting her and calling her names, she was like, oh, it's like that? Okay. And she said whatever she said. Next thing you know, that guy ain't there no more. That's what you need to do. If you got dragons, use them. So the Love Lab will be literally working stuff out in a positive way where we all can begin to see the value of our own story. And when you got music like that going on, come on, I don't even take credit for that. That's Barbara Beckley with that whole thing. So I have no other choice. That's her story, and I have no other choice but to follow along. So again, every Friday at 10 o'clock, starting this Friday, March 4th, I'm going to start out by saying, welcome to the Love Lab. Okay? And then we're going to go from there.
Love it. Love it. See you this Friday. We'll be posting more reminders, but thank you very big Mixon, and
thank you. And ladies, last thing I'll say, bring the hard questions. Don't bring me the easy stuff. Bring me, and I'm not going to know all the answers, but I think if we work in a collaborative way, again, it's not going to be, well, he did this and she did this. My question is, what you going to do? What's the story that you tell? There you go. So see you on Friday. Barbara, look forward to it. Barbara is going to be my host and, of course, my guide, because Barbara is the one that let me know. No, that's not going to work, Barry. Oh, okay, great. So, all right. Let me go. See you later, Barbara. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry.
Okay, bye-bye.